Today, with the 2020-2021 Premier League season over, we digest the grandeur provided by each side, along with the trials and tribulations each squad faced as well. Not only looking back to provide our appraisal of the squads, we look forward to next season as well, and introduce the new teams that'll be coming up next year in the Premier League season. This is the Premiership Perusal podcast.
Manchester City are still alive here. Balotelli, Aguero! Back, Fuchs, and the ball in behind Damian Vardy! It's 11! It's heaven for Jamie Vardy!
You are an ostrich. Well, your head must be in the sand. Is your head in the sand? Are you flexible enough to get your head in the sand?
Now the fans are shouting every week, Louis van Gaal's army! Louis van Gaal's army!
One defeat after a fabulous start. The game just got away from you there.
I have nothing to say.
Nothing to say about the game at all?
Nothing.
Let's get into it.
We're here. We're live. I'm dressed in all black. It's a funeral for the season today because it's over. It's laid to rest.
Funeral for Sheffield United.
It may,
R.I.P.
May they rest in pieces.
Lots of pieces. Reese's Pieces.
So in this episode, we're going to be going over each team's season, see exactly what went down, why it went down, how it went down.
Yeah, we're going to look at the good, the bad, the ugly for each team, every team. There's no hiding on the Premiership Perusal podcast and the season recap.
There's no protection for you. We're coming for you.
We're coming guns blazing, baby.
Speaking of guns, right away, pow, pow. We're going alphabetical. Arsenal this year finishing 8th outside of Europe for the first time in quite some time.
Yeah, must be like, I don't know, 25 years or something.
25 was the number.
Yeah, interesting season for Arsenal. I mean, the start of the season was a really, really bad start. They were in 15th, about halfway through the season or so.
Yeah, there's talks of relegation for some point. I mean, it was always kind of silly talk, but...
Yeah, a little ridiculous, but, people love that kind of storyline stuff. They really struggled going forward. Defensively, they weren't too bad. They were pretty solid, but going forward, it was just so dire.
Yeah, they were tidy and conservative with their possession, as most of the stats show, yet 13th with shots on target. I mean, the possession just wasn't really resulting in the best of chances.
Yeah, there was a lot of really slow build-up play, not creating many chances. Mm-hmm. Pretty easily for teams to just sit back and play a low block against them.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that resulted in losses to teams like Burnley, Everton, Wolves, Tottenham, and Villa.
Yeah, I mean, even just going away from the attack for a second, too, they were near the bottom in tackles in their own third, and then in the midfield as well. I mean, it just... I don't know. With them going forward, they have to change some aspects of their game. I mean, the more modern game involves a whole lot more pressing. And even, Arteta takes aspects from City's game, obviously, since he was with Pep there. But City does a good amount of pressing. It's generally in the attacking third to get the ball back. But, Arsenal doesn't really press that much when I watch them.
Yeah, overall, just really slow play from Arsenal, including the build-up from the back. A guy like David Luiz, Granit Xhaka, they're good in possession, but they play really slowly, and that allows defenses time to get into position.
Yeah, and they still have qualities about them. I mean, Xhaka led the Premier League in passes into the final third this year, so there's still good qualities about the team. It's just they need to tune it up a bit.
Yeah, he definitely had a better season than in the past. I think the exile and then coming back, and now he's kind of...
rejuvenated somewhat.
Yeah, he's back, but I think the fans just don't really give him the respect he might deserve just because of what's happened in the past. Mm-hmm. A lot fewer mistakes in the box from him. clumsy tackles.
I mean, they're going to need them going forward. They're kind of going more towards a younger team. They're going to need some of these older vets to step up.
Yeah, he's definitely a useful player, but he may be leaving,
True.
going to Roma, join up with
there's a
Jose
chance.
Mourinho.
Yes.
So we'll have to see about that. I think that'll be a big miss for the Arsenal team, not having a great passer like he is.
A good facilitator, not just like a ball stopper at all
Right.
times, which you'll always need. Back to touch on the younger guys, I mean, this is what it's all about for Arsenal. This is their most exciting aspect. One stat I found pretty funny. All the plus minus per 90 in terms of goals, every player was City except for one player. You know, I guess who it was? It was an Arsenal player. Was the one guy that wasn't, obviously, the City player. You have a guess? As an Arsenal fan?
Emile Smith-Rowe,
It was Emile Smith-Rowe. He was in there.
the savior, coming in about halfway through the season, at the end of December, comes in against Chelsea. Arsenal win the game 3-1, and he just looks like a breath of fresh air. He's making runs all over the place, playing in balls. It's just kind of the opposite of everything that Arsenal was doing in the first half of the season. Slow play, no dangerous balls into the final third. A willing runner.
Yeah, I mean, you definitely look at Smith Rowe, Saka. They're going to be the guys that you're obviously going to want to incorporate in your plans when you're playing to your strengths. Odegaard, what's the plan with him? I haven't seen or heard anything about him lately.
Yeah, so the reports are saying that he is the number one target in the offseason. So it'll be interesting to see. I know Zinedine Zidane not coming back to Real Madrid next season. So whoever's taking charge might have plans to include Odegaard in that team.
And there's always just the fact that Madrid want to probably keep Odegaard to try and bring Erling Haaland and other Norwegian international to the Bernabeu. So you never know. But that's enough La Liga. We're only about, This is a Premiership podcast.
Yeah, so pretty much just wrapping up on Arsenal. Few players that didn't have a great year. Willian, he was a letdown. I mean, he's on pretty high wages. Aubameyang, definitely a player who Arsenal have relied on in the past and just didn't have the cutting edge that he had in the past.
It'll be interesting to see if he's just on his way down or if this was maybe just 1 year where it kind of didn't click for him because he's too focused on the contract and stuff. And we'll have to see next year.
Yeah,
what
he did
brings.
get the big contract. He also had the bout with malaria in the middle of the season, so could have affected him. We'll see next season. And then the loanee from Real Madrid, the second loanee, Danny Ceballos, end of his time at Arsenal. Pretty disappointing. He really struggled in the Europa League and didn't get too many chances in the Premier League.
He's just one of those guys where he doesn't really excel at anything, but he's not terrible at like certain things in particular. He's just kind of decent all around.
Until you face off against Villarreal in the Europa League semifinal.
And then, yeah, I suppose when you're going against the Yellow Submarine, that's a little rough. So he's gone. Is anybody else of note, like for sure, gone from Arsenal? Do we know?
Question marks over Lacazette still. Reports saying that he has been offered a 1-year deal. So you wouldn't expect him to take a 1-year deal, but I guess we'll see. David Luiz leaving the club. I'm happy personally. I don't like David Luiz.
They were pretty. I think they're throwing a party in the on Instagram. I saw it was secretly wasn't for David Luiz. It was that he was leaving.
Yeah, exactly.
I guess one last thing to wrap up with Arsenal. Just when you look at their stats and you're watching them, what I always think is, and depending on what metric you use for the stats referring to this, but the attackers kind of vary. It's kind of a game to game. Just there's no real flow to it. I feel like they just need to kind of figure out their constant, like who's their guy, who are they going to be utilizing the most, what are their strengths when going forward, who their best guys are.
Yeah, I think that was another thing with Aubameyang is that he doesn't really have a good position in the team. He's been playing off on the left a lot, but that doesn't really utilize his skill set as much. But when he's playing centrally, his link-up play isn't the best.
Mm-hmm.
And Lacazette is preferred in that way, and he kind of drops in as more of a 10 role sometimes and
Yeah.
can link up play better.
Yeah, I mean, just going off, not even the end of the year, but just given the money to put into him, you feel like you got to kind of build it around Pepe as the main attacker, and then, you put in your Smith Rowe, and if Odegaard comes back, I'm sure you'll factor him in, but
Yeah.
Saka as well, you got to get these guys incorporated as much as possible. Moving on from Arsenal, go to the next A team, Aston Villa.
Aston Villa.
Finished 11th. It's kind of I wouldn't say a strange year. They looked good. It was an unfortunate, maybe, you might say, year because of Grealish going down. They had a little 12-game run where they only took 12 points. It kind of, because they were contending for Europe, and that just kind of detoured that, a little fork in the road moment for their season. But what are your thoughts on Villa just right away?
Yeah, overall, I mean, a great season for Villa. Considering last season, they were almost relegated. They survived by a point because they beat Arsenal.
Yeah, I was going to say thanks to Arsenal. Arsenal shined their face on Villa and poo-pooed all over Watford.
Yeah, so in return, we'll take one Jack Grealish. Thank you. Yeah, but a pretty good season. I mean, there was that spurt when they were missing Jack Grealish, and it showed. Definitely a different team without him, but overall, a good season for them. I think, European spots just a little out of reach for them.
As for now, yeah, I'd say. Grealish, I mean, what do you have to say? It's just he's elite at progressively carrying the ball into the other team's third and then carrying it into the box in the final third. He's just fantastic. And drawing foul, he led the league by a substantial margin. And I mean, that we don't really think about it, but that does take wear and tear on the body, so it's going to be tough for him to always stay healthy, so they can't fully always rely on him to be healthy. One guy I just want to get your thoughts on, Ollie Watkins. Had a good year goal-wise, production-wise. He was third in progressive passes received. So he gets his chances out there.
Yeah, I think he's a good player to build around as well. At core of Jack Grealish, Ollie Watkins. They're two guys going forward who will probably be in the team for a while if they don't get sold. But yeah, Ollie Watkins, when I compare him to someone, I look at Neil Maupay, who hasn't really succeeded as much.
Both championship guys that were brought in for...
Yeah, both from Brentford. I think Ollie Watkins is more of a better forward going ahead in attack.
He's just more your basic 9 that you can count on to bag goals.
Yeah, I expect him to get even better as he gets more experience in the league.
Absolutely. Another attacker they have that did pretty well at times this year, Traore, former Ajax and Chelsea player. I was surprised when I saw that he was tied with Rashford and the Wilf for dribbles that led to a shot this year. He's just really good secondary creative player for them when they don't have Grealish.
Yeah, I mean, I always like those kinds of guys. When you have a guy like Jack Grealish and Traore together, they kind of can bounce off of each other because when one of them has the ball, they're reeling in the defenders, and then the other one's going to have more space, along with Ollie Watkins. So I just like what he brings to the team. He puts the defenses on edge, I think. Another
guy who unsung hero might not even be enough for him, but Matty Target did very well, not only defending, but he does a really good job passing when you watch him, and then all the stats indicate progressive passes. He's very high in.
Yeah, he's definitely a quality player looking to solidify that Villa defense. They definitely looked a lot better this year.
Yeah, he looks pretty good out wide there. And then the man who shoots The man who shoots, he relishes when Grealish isn't in there. El Ghazi.
When Jack Grealish is away, El Ghazi plays.
Yes. He had a very solid year. 10-goal output for them. Just any thoughts about their form this year, or specifically maybe towards the end of the year? They had some big wins to build off of.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how they build on this 11th place finish going forward next year. What kind of additions they might want to make. And of course, there's always the topic of, will Jack Grealish want to go somewhere else?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, right now it seems like
He's content.
he's content. So that's something to keep in mind, because without Jack Grealish,
Yeah, we'll
you're a
see,
different team.
especially with the Euros coming up. You don't want to underestimate the impact of him talking with other English players, secretly recruiting him.
That's a good point. Yeah.
Being like, hey, Jack, how's Villa? How's Villa doing? But I would just say my main takeaway is just a good building year. After last year, they just barely stayed alive. And then we've seen so many times when teams do that, it goes one or two ways the next year. They either just definitely bottom three, not even close. They're going to be relegated Sunderland style. Or Leicester, where they obviously pushed for the title and won it. But in this case, Villa, they at least pushed to make improvements. As far as that goes for Villa, I think that's about it on my end.
I'd say that about covers it. I think next year they could potentially be pushing top half. It all depends on the injuries.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if
They
Jack
could.
Grealish can stay healthy, which he has shown to have some issues with durability. So moving on to the next team, the Seagulls, Brighton, finishing 16th, one spot down from last year where they finished 15th. What are your thoughts on Brighton this year?
Well, we've talked about it before with them. They do play kind of an attractive style of football. Sixth most touches in opponents' final third, fifth in their third, so they're going to be playing out from the back a lot, kind of possessing the ball. Lowest shot on target percentage.
Not surprising.
That's what it really is going to come down to. Maupay was top 10 in expected goals. I mean, I'm not a huge fan of expected goals, but it gives some value. I mean, he's supposed to be scoring some of these chances, and he's just not quality enough.
Yeah, for sure.
My main players for them are going to be Dunk, Gross, and Trossard. Gross, top 10 in key passes. Second in corners, they just have him distributing the ball a lot out there. Dunk was he was the top outfield player in touches in his own third. So they're really looking for him to kind of facilitate out from the back, kind of build their possession. Any other players? Obviously, Basuma will be one that you'll touch on.
Yeah, Basuma had a great season. I mean, he'll most likely be leaving. But when I look at this team, I think they're not too far off of what Villa are.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they're one superstar away from being a Villa caliber team.
I don't even know if they necessarily need like a superstar like Grealish to be in there. They just need a 9. They just need a guy who can bag them some goals, because they have the possession, and it's good possession. We always talk about that. Good possession versus bad possession. They do stuff with the ball. It just doesn't end up in the net because they don't have the quality finishers that they need.
Yeah, they need like a 15 goal a season kind of forward, and then I think they'd be pushing that top half.
Yeah.
Because they have a lot of quality players. I mean, Lewis Dunk, solid player.
Mm-hmm.
Ben White,
Oh,
great young player.
Yeah, he's going to get better.
He's only going to get better. Gross, distributing the ball.
Mm-hmm.
Even Sanchez is coming in look pretty good this year. A guy like Trossard can be good as well.
Yeah, he's more. He should be ideally their like secondary playmaker. He should be their Bertrand Traore of
That's a good comparison.
Brighton. So going forward, just kind of talking about their form during the year, it kind of was just kind of all over the place. I mean, that's what you expect with the 16th place side. What are your thoughts on their offseason? What they should address specifically going forward.
Yeah, for sure they need to bring in a goal scorer, but the problem is they're kind of accumulating these attacking players who aren't doing anything too much. I mean, you have Neil Maupay. I think it's going to be hard to get rid of him.
Yeah, since you just bought him not too long ago.
Danny Welbeck, I'm not sure on what his contract situation is. He might have a year or two left. And then a guy like Johan Bosch.
If they can offload him. Yeah, I mean, my main takeaway from it is just that Trossard and Gross, when you watch and you look at the stats, they carry their weight in attack. They perform above expectations a lot of times. Maupay, Lallana, McAllister, Connolly, Welbeck, not so much. They just need to maybe bring in slightly more quality. I don't know. They're not the biggest spenders or anything, but we've seen teams hit on small purchases before that come up big in the past.
Yeah, they definitely just need that one quality signing. I mean, when you look at their defense, they conceded 46 goals. And when you look at the teams above them, Newcastle, Wolves, Palace, and Southampton, the 46 was a lot better than any of those teams.
Absolutely.
So you can see the qualities there in the defense. The 40 goals this season was really lackluster.
I'd say one of the main surprises of the year had to have been Sanchez, right? They sell Matt Ryan.
Loan him out.
Well,
Yeah.
yes, a form of selling in a way.
Yeah, I mean, supposedly Matt Ryan didn't like Neil Maupay, and they got into an argument, which Matt Ryan, Arsenal fan, Neil Maupay takes out Burnley, goalkeeper union. So I could see how Matt Ryan wouldn't like that, Still, I think Matt Ryan, definitely a quality goalkeeper.
Yeah, he's solid. He would be a really good backup, I would say, and he can be a serviceable keeper for a bottom half of the table team at times.
I think a team that should go after him would be Southampton.
I could see it. I mean, they don't spend a ton of money, and this was probably one of his lesser years when he was on Brighton, compared to the past years. And Sanchez really was probably, I think, like a top. When you look at the metrics, it was like top 6, top 7 goalie, and you can see at times it is kind of weird when you watch him because sometimes he will like drop the ball or a little unsure, and you're like, this guy, but he gets it done.
He gets it done, yeah. I think Matt Ryan won't be that expensive, honestly, because they don't have a use for him. Arsenal might be interested, but the issue is that he would take a homegrown spot, or he's not a homegrown spot, whatever. So if Leno stays, then he's taking up a homegrown spot on the bench, which isn't ideal.
Yeah, so true. Moving on, we got some beautiful football right here in Burnley.
Sean Dyche's men.
17th this year, big drop off from 10th a couple years back.
Last year
even, and then a couple years before that, they were pushing European spots.
They did make it into the Europa League. Qualifying round.
Yep, 7th, and they lost their play-in because they didn't try. Bad. I don't think. Players of the year just off the bat, Chris Wood did an excellent job getting them goals. Had a couple assists as well. James Tarkowski, Ben Mee, their defense, very, very solid. Dwight McNeil has shown signs of improvement.
Yeah, I think he's a kind of guy that might improve over time. He's a young player. Something Burnley should be focusing on, getting a little younger.
He's a little way of what they normally do, because what they normally do now, this year they're bottom third in touches virtually all over the field. They're the anti-carry club. They're not going to possess the ball, kind of slowly bring it forward. They're going to win headers. They're last in pass accuracy. Like this isn't really what Dwight McNeil is. He's more of a modern kind of player, whereas Burnley are trying to shift away from that, or you'd think by developing guys like McNeil.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, if you're going to play in this hoofball system, you need a solid strike partner for Chris Wood. I mean, he's really
someone to provide some relief to Chris Wood.
Yeah, he's kind of going alone without having Ashley Barnes for most of the season this year. It was a little rough at times.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they also led the league in most high passes, meaning pretty much aerial passes.
Yeah, they had some really great games. I mean, in particular, the win against Wolves 4-0, they were playing some really nice football.
Early on at times.
Fast passing, free flowing. But some games it was just like, wow, this is really bad.
Yeah, another important guy on their team, too, when you look at the stats, you don't really notice a ton because they don't attack as much, but Westwood does get the ball into their box a good amount, even just relative to other Premier League players. He's pretty important for them as a guy who can swing it in or even try and find Chris Wood in.
Yeah, he's
low
a
drives.
solid player for Burnley.
Yep. As far as their defense, though, Tarkovsky was pretty much the most efficient pressure in the Premier League, specifically in his own defensive third, which not too surprising. Pope, slight down year, not terrible or anything by any means.
Yeah.
Did have the highest save percentage in the Premier League. But Burnley, their two men, I mean, they're top. I think Tarkovsky was first in clearances and me was fourth in clearances or something like that. So they do a good job of doing what they're supposed to do, just kind of absorb the pressure and bend but don't break kind of thing.
Yeah, they're solid. It'll be interesting to see next season in the off season with the new owners for Burnley what kind of reinforcements they allow Sean Dyche to bring in because
Plus,
it's definitely needed.
Yeah, I mean, just this year's main takeaway, poor finish compared to past years. Oldest squad in the Premier League. What are they going to do to reinforce that? They really only have Brownhill and McNeil as like their kind of more younger guys. I mean, it's not like their main guys like Tarkovsky and me are old, and Pope are old by any means, but they got to have some way to bring in some reinforcements, you'd think. And then they got to work on Sean Dyche. I mean, he's not even secure quite yet, so we'll see what goes on. I would say the main thing they have to address is midfield. They need a good ball winner in midfield. It's not like Jeff Hendrick was amazing, but he was at least serviceable. Right now, it just feels like they don't have a true 8 or even a 6, really.
Yeah, they need a little more control in the midfield.
For sure. Any other points on Burnley? Or is that enough Burnley for you?
Yeah, I think that's good for
It's
Burnley.
not enough for me. I could never get enough. Moving on, we have the only European champions of London Town. That would be Chelsea Football Club. Winning the Champions League final last night. Big win against Manchester City. This year in the Premier League, not nearly as good as the Champions League. They finished 4th. They got it done. It didn't look good. They probably didn't deserve it. But what are your initial thoughts on Chelsea's year?
Yeah, I mean, starting off the season with Frank Lampard, he did a great job last season guiding them through this transfer ban and introducing the young players into the team like Mason Mount.
They even got a good amount out of Abraham and at times Hudson-Odoi and stuff. And then
Right. Yeah, unfortunately, those guys not really in the team as much this season. But
besides Mount, obviously. But
besides Mount,
yeah.
right.
Even survived with Kepa in that.
Yeah. So, Frank Lampard sacked January 25th, replaced by Thomas Tuchel. At the time, Chelsea were 9th after 9 games, 11 points off the lead, 5 points off of 4th place.
19 games?
What'd I say?
You said 9.
After 19 games.
It was the 9 and 9.
Big nail in the cross in the coffin?
Nail in the coffin.
Nail in the coffin.
Yes.
Was the 3-1 defeat to Arsenal. I mean, this was a Arsenal side that was really struggling, and then they came in and looked great.
Yeah.
So that kind of led to a skid, which prompted them to bring in Thomas Tuchel.
And you could really kind of feel a difference shift right away. They did play, in a sense, somewhat similar. Lampard and Tuchel. Obviously, Tuchel a little more possession-based. And you could really see that they had 3 guys in the top 10 in terms of just pass completion, all center backs. That's going to indicate that they're moving the ball around the back line. Mason Mount this year, what do you got to say about him? I mean, he's just fantastic. Second in key passes. I mean, he had the most dead ball passes that led to shots. So I mean, that means he's just really getting them in good chances out there.
Yeah, he's an incredible player. I mean, when you look at the players they brought in, Kai Havertz and Timo Werner, Mount was better than both of them.
Absolutely.
For sure.
Not even close.
By miles, leaps and bounds. So it's one of those things. It's always good to be developing those young guys, which Chelsea
seem to have been doing more often than not lately. Before
Yeah.
they were not.
Once they were forced into doing it, I mean,
then they were able to.
they kind of got the benefit with that one.
His expected goal plus minus, he was the only player in the top 10 in the Premier League, minus Man City players. So, I mean, he's just really a truly good player. I mean, you saw the impact he had in yesterday's game. Other players that really stood out to you for Chelsea this year?
Definitely Conte. I mean, he's a great player and huge in winning the Champions League final.
Absolutely.
Azpilicueta, been solid back there.
Yeah, he's just their rock, their captain.
Thiago Silva, I mean...
Sneaky good. It kind of seemed like if PSG's letting him go, he might be kind of washed, but...
Yeah, I mean, he's 36 at the time, and definitely a questionable signing, but he was solid back there, for sure. They had a huge window bringing in, Havertz and Ziyech and Werner and Chilwell.
I mean, not to mention the man, the myth, the legend, Mr. Mendy, to replace the other man, myth, legend, Kepa.
Yeah, so I think there was just a lot of expectations, and I think Frank Lampard did a great job of guiding them through last season.
Mm-hmm, yeah.
But when it comes to getting the
pushing
elite
him more
places, you need a manager like Thomas Tuchel who can
absolutely
do that.
Absolutely. I would agree with that.
So that pretty much covers it for Chelsea, unless you have any other...
Just some minor notes. I felt like Ziyech in his first year really showed flashes of being good. He was top 3 in scoring chances created per 90. I feel like he definitely performed better even in the Champions League than the Premier League, but it'll be interesting going forward seeing what he does. Other than that, just a quick Kovacic stat. Top 3 behind Rice and Rodri for dribble percentage for the Premier League.
There you go.
Yep. Moving on, we got America's team, some might say. the Crystal Palace Eagles.
The Eagles, minus the cheerleaders and minus the Eagles.
Yeah, so they're becoming less American, slowly but surely, and that's why they're getting worse.
Now that you say that, I think it all makes sense. No cheerleaders, no Eagles.
They're no longer America's team.
They're no longer America's team, but also this is why they were pretty bad this year.
Yeah, I mean, where's the motivation?
Exactly.
There's less freedom.
Yep. Let's get these boys some freedom.
Finishing 14th last year. 14th. So kind of stagnant. No longer going to be stagnant. Roy Hodgson out. Bunch of players out of contract at the end of this year. Definitely be interesting to see where they end up going. We'll touch on them a little more later. Getting back to just their bright spots. Guaita, Wilf, somehow Gary Cahill hanging on, doing a solid job out there.
Yeah, unexpectedly, but he was solid.
And Edsay doing a really nice job, kind of a small buy from QPR, who didn't do like anything too amazing, but he had moments, absolutely, for sure.
Yeah, he added quality to the team, which was severely needed. They played the system, a very passive system. Mm-hmm. What are your thoughts on the way they played?
When you go through the stats, dispossessed the most, least likely to switch up play, near the top in tackles in their own third, so they do kind of sit back a little more, almost like Burnley style. But when they are in their top, or when they're in their third, they are pressuring. They're putting, I think Tyrick Mitchell was top 3 in pressures in the defensive end, and Ayew was top 3 in pressures in midfield. Your guy, Mr. Ayew.
Stop.
Yeah, just led the league in being tackled. They really didn't have a ton going forward. Some bright spots, I guess, stats-wise, was Benteke had the best shot on target percentage per 90 minutes. I mean, and Eze, getting back to him, he was top 5 in assists compared to his expected assists. So, I mean, he's making good plays out of nothing out there, and was top 3 in dribbles that led to a goal. So they have some quality. We didn't even touch on Wilf yet. I'll let you touch on him. You're more of a Wilfred Zaha kind of guy anyway. But it's hard to say going forward what this year means for them, because so much is going to be different, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, so looking at the changes that'll be happening at the end of the season, players that are out of contract, in addition to Roy Hodgson leaving, Christian Benteke, Townsend, Jeffrey Schlupp, Patrick Van Aanholt, McCarthy, MacArthur, Joel Ward, Scott Dan, and Gary Cahill are all out of contract this summer. So you're either looking at extending these players, which I would have thought they would already have done.
Yeah, more than likely a lot
If
of
they
them,
were
if
going
not
to.
all of them, will be gone
And then you're looking at a club which doesn't spend that much
to begin with.
And then it's a COVID year, so they're probably looking to spend even less.
Yeah, so it'll be nice for them to cut wages. You'll probably see a lot more, if not youth players, more like championship signings from them, kind of cost-effective signings to rebuild their squad. This could go so bad or so good and be a blessing in disguise that all these guys are gone. It'll be hard to tell, but
Yeah, I think they really need to hire the right person who
Frank de Boer.
who has expertise in scouting or
just has a particular mindset on how he wants to play going forward, and then the board's on the same kind of wavelength in terms of what they want. As long as you have like a goal, that's the main thing. You have a certain directive and you're pragmatic about your situation. That's the main thing that you're going to need.
Success to me for Palace next season will be that they survive.
Yeah, because it's going to be either it goes Sunderland mode or you stay up, and anything after that is just success, I would agree.
Yep. A couple notable performances. They beat Leeds 4-0 at home. A little shocking. And then not so shocking, they got beat by Liverpool 7-0.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
There's a little bend don't break in that game they broke.
Moving on to Everton, finishing 10th in the league, up from 12th last season. They started off the season strong, won their first 4 games, and then drew to Liverpool. What are your thoughts on Everton?
A little more possession than you'd think. They're third in touches in their own end, suggesting they're going to kind of try to build out from the back. Best dueling team percentage-wise. They didn't have the most aerial duels or anything, but a lot of that's going to be, Allen in midfield. He's very good at winning the ball. Pressed at high rates in their own third, but not in the attack, not in the mid, just in their own thirds. We'll get to the players, but I'll just kick it off. Calvert-Lewin, second in the Premier League in non-penalty goals and shots on target.
Yeah, he tallied 16 goals. 11 of his 16 goals came in the first 11 games, with only 5 in the next 27. And he missed 5 of those due to injury. So definitely started off really strong and then cooled off. But also missing a guy like James Rodriguez
to distribute absolutely
the ball. Another thing of note, Everton had a great December. They beat Chelsea, Leicester, Arsenal, and then capped it off with a win against Sheffield United. And then they also beat Liverpool for the first time since 2010, and the first win at Anfield since 99.
Yeah, they were hanging around the Champions League spots, not just the Europa League spots, Champions League spots for quite a while into the year. They did kind of fall off. They kind of fell off with Calvert-Lewin's form, which also coincided with Jaime's getting hurt, believe it or not. So
Yeah, and Calvert-Lewin also had an injury himself. Missed 5 games.
Yep. So it's nice to see that they can show this quality and they can have this run. It's just a matter of extending the run further into next year.
Yeah, so I talked about the teams they beat in December. That was offset by the teams that they lost against. They lost to teams like Sheffield United, Fulham, and Burnley. Definitely games they should be winning. And those are the kind of games that get you into the European spots.
That's what I call the old Wenger games, because what he used to do, he used to always beat up on the small teams, always made sure that they won those games, got the points they needed from those games. And if you win some games against the bigger clubs, that's just icing on the cake. But at least taking care of what you have to do against the teams that you should win, that's so underrated. Just look at teams like Chelsea year after year always do that late in the year where they'll just blow a game. This year was West Brom 5-2. They just always blow a game that you need to take care of.
Yep.
As far as just kind of going as a recap, Jaime's health, they were, I wouldn't say like super dependent on him because they still played okay. It just wasn't as good as they were playing before. Richarlison's got to be more efficient next year. He missed a lot of sitters just watching, and then you go back and look at his advanced stats, and they are not too kind to him. Is there anything you would have them address in the window this summer? Maybe some defense, maybe like another center back. I don't know exactly what they would.
I think they want to look at getting in another creative midfielder. James Rodriguez missed 15 games this season, so obviously he's not someone you can rely on.
Count on, yeah. And Gylfi's more of their secondary. I feel like he could make the jump, maybe. It might be past him, but
I'm not the biggest fan of him in the past few years, but I think getting a guy who can really help out Calvert-Lewin, get more chances, and then he can put those ones away.
What about Bernard?
The little guy.
Shrektar's finest.
Yep.
Moving on from Everton to the first relegated team, Fulham, sadly departing. 2 wins in their first 22 matches. You dig yourself that kind of a hole, what are you going to do?
Yeah, that is rough.
Yeah. And even though they played attractive football and they really started coming on towards the end, they were maybe even making a push for the Great Escape, it just wasn't going to be. Too little too late. Scott Parker did a great job still, even with them going down. I had them finishing bottom start of the year. Their quality was not there. They brought in some loan players that looked pretty well for them. Really, they were their main bright spots on the team. Wouldn't you say?
Yeah, Anderson looked really solid. Definitely could see him at a different team higher up in the league.
Yeah, Tottenham.
Yeah, for sure Tottenham. He seemed like a great leader. Naturally, just slotted in there. Sometimes these guys come in and they look shaky, but he never really looked shaky to me. And then Areola in net, another solid goalkeeper.
Yeah, he might even get sold by the parent club. So, one thing that you notice when you look at the stats with Fulham, how successful they are when it comes to dribbling. Very, very efficient at that. With that said, whether it be passes or whatnot, and occasionally on the dribbles, they were dispossessed the second most. Not the best.
Yeah,
only
great.
With how much they had possession to be passing at a 80.5% rate is technically average, but all those teams that are around them, they're not holding the ball as much. So they're not going to be expected to pass as well. Whereas if you're going to hold the ball, kind of play possession style like Fulham was, you got to make sure that your passing is crisp.
Yeah, that definitely hurt them alongside the poor finishing. Just absolute dire. They would get the ball into good positions, but then after that, it was like you just got to hope that somehow the ball goes into the net.
Mm-hmm. Because they did a good job in midfield. They didn't really have anyone to me that stood out in terms of like ball winners, but they were pretty high in tackles and interceptions combined. I think they were like top 3 or top 5. As far as the attacking goes, Mitrovic was second in shots per 90. I thought that was funny since I don't think I saw him play really this year.
Maybe a couple times early on, but
Yeah. Going back to another good player for them, though, Areola. We look at the stats for him. He was probably, as far as a ball stopper, just top 3 keeper in the league.
yeah, he was solid. Someone who was disappointing for them, Loftus-Cheek. Just 1 goal in 32 appearances. Man, when I watch him, it's like he'll get the ball and he'll be in a great position to shoot, and then he's just like afraid to shoot or
Yeah,
something.
he's not super attacking minded when it comes to shooting. He's almost like the English Ceballos in a way. Different reasons, but very similar. And it's like you expect them to do it because they're there, they're in a good spot, they have the talent, and then it just doesn't quite do it. And then you'll find yourself watching the game and you're like, oh, he's on the field. Sometimes you just be like, oh, he's out there. I didn't notice. I don't know what he was doing. One last little quick stat. Lookman was 12th in touches in the final third, so that was their main guy they went to. And he showed okay moments.
Yeah.
But after him, I mean, there was Maja for half a year. He bagged some goals, but, I mean, they just didn't have the quality, as proof by Mr. Carvalho, or Cavallero.
Cavallero is like,
We don't need to get into it again. We don't need to bash this man. We know he stinks.
he did great to get into good spots, and then just ruined
Then
it.
he was old player on Chelsea, Ramirez, when it came to shooting out there, pretty much.
It was a nightmare. So, Fulham, we bid you farewell. Maybe we'll see you in another year.
Yeah,
Maybe not.
They could easily come up, but again, you never know with the Championship. Their style, it got them up here this far this year, but we'll see coming up. So,
Yep.
Moving on. I'll let you talk. 'Cause
Moving on to Leeds.
We got a lot to talk about with this team.
What an amazing season for Leeds. We've seen what they could do in the Championship, narrowly missing out 2 years ago, and then last year gaining promotion.
Just dominating.
Just amazing. I mean, the way Bielsa has his team playing, it's like nothing I've ever seen before. The way that they play is very intense. They are nonstop running. He requires the full commitment out of each and every player. And he really gives confidence to players like Pat Bamford, who was a guy who was unwanted, hadn't really ever done much, scores maybe a couple goals, bounces from team to team.
Mm-hmm.
But under this team, he is a star and a central piece to the attack for Leeds. I mean, it was just amazing. What do you think about Leeds?
Yeah, just the ability to possess the ball, highest touches, especially in their own third. They were always in the top half in touches, but I think they were maybe top 3, I want to say, for touches in their own third. They're just able to possess the ball. And then just all the defensive categories. They're near the top in interceptions, tackles, recovery. Their center backs will just start straight from the back. I guess we can start with Melier, who was, along with like Areola, probably one of the best keepers of the year, maybe with Martinez and stuff. So
Yeah, he was a great keeper. He did have a couple mistakes against Arsenal, but overall, young
what
player,
are you going to do?
He's a great player.
Against the best team in.
Definitely a great asset to have on the team.
Center back pairing of Cooper and Llorente were very high in tackle percentage on dribblers, so they weren't going to get beat as much as other teams. Highly productive and efficient in attack, especially while shooting. They were top 4 in shots on target and percentage of shots on target. least amount of passes against them by opponents.
Yeah, they would just press you so hard and win that ball back way high up the field.
And I mean, and we shouldn't just have a good old Leeds session here, but they had
Leeds can do nothing wrong.
They did give up a high percent of shot creation actions, and that's just going to happen with pressing. Sometimes you do get caught out. Sometimes the team beats it, but no, it's the positives outweigh the negatives by so much with this team. It's really incredible. Ayling and Dallas going forward, and even back on defense, they're good. I mean, Luke Ayling was probably like a top 5, for sure, top 10. I'd probably say top 5 defender this year.
Yeah.
As far as just winning the ball in midfield and whatnot. And Dallas going in attack, probably one of, if not the best attacking defenders in the Premier League this year, and progressing the ball. Harrison does such a good job of that, creating chances for Bamford and whatnot. I saw Click and Harrison both top 5 in passes that led to a shot in the Premier League.
Yeah, Jack Harrison, he can put in a nice cross. That's for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, what's next for Leeds?
That's a good question. I mean,
Push for Europe? Is it?
Yeah, I would say so.
As far as bringing guys in, maybe some depth pieces. You're losing Pablo Hernandez and Berardi, some club legends, but they weren't playing a ton.
Yeah, it's hard to say. What do they bring in to add to the squad?
Maybe just add. I mean, you have Rodrigo as a backup striker, and you just spent a lot on him. He's not even really like a striker for him this year. They just kind of relied on Bamford, but Bamford, he's shown injury history. Same with Calvin Phillips. So even Cooper at times has shown a little bit of injury history. So I think just adding more depth pieces will really be, that's all they have to do, because their starting 11 is very, very nice.
Yeah, solid. Also looking to sign Jack Harrison on a permanent.
True, from City. Yeah, they're almost going to have to. And that's, I couldn't imagine, City might kind of hold them to it, be like, well, you really need this guy, so pay this. But, I mean, who else? I mean, City doesn't really need him, so it'd be other Premier League teams. Yeah. But overall, great year for Leeds. This concludes the first half of our 2020-2021 Premier League season recap show. Stay tuned for part 2. We'll still be discussing the rest of the clubs as well as the new clubs too.